Hey, and welcome back to the Brian Escow Show, hosted by somebody who has gained 10 pounds in the last 2 months since his wedding. So that's my very self deprecating and really hold me accountable way of starting the podcast. You're about to see me lose that weight and get back on track. Welcome back, everybody, and Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Speaking of that debate over whether a Jew, such as myself, let alone anyone, should be saying one or the other. Here's where I've really always stood on that. For whatever reason, I grew up saying Merry Christmas to people in the town that I grew up in. I don't know. Maybe it's because my friends were not Jewish growing up and I wanted to fit in with them, or yeah, that's probably what it was, being with people, during the holiday season and not wanting to feel like the odd guy out. You say Merry Christmas, right? I mean, because that's the thing about being Jewish or about having an ethnic identity, a personal identity, a religious identity, however you want to frame it. And it is interesting to get into that whole side of things. How do you frame it? But pardon me, sip of tea. Look at me, I'm already ranting. But to give a point to the critical race theorists, and I hope and think that this will all make sense by the time I'm done ranting. There is something to personal identity. Yes, identity is a thing and mainstream culture is a thing. And well, if you don't have a mainstream identity, then you are not fitting neatly, if you will, into the mainstream culture. But that doesn't mean the mainstream culture is out to get you. That doesn't mean the mainstream culture needs to be changed. That doesn't mean you're being disadvantaged. It just means that you're a little different, and that's okay. And so we'll get into that as the show goes on. But I've always been a Merry Christmas guy, yet my post yesterday when I was feeling sentimental and really wanted to wish everyone the best during the holiday season, I went with Happy Holidays because I don't know. I just feel like at 36 on X, speaking to a general audience, I want to say Happy Holidays because there's a lot of diversity out there and it's all cool. It's all cool. It's all cool with me. If you're cool with America and your values comport with the American system and can exist within it, which it should be able to because the American system is based on freedom and equality and the rule of law. If you can work within that, which is a pretty broad framework, then you're all right with me. Yeah. So that's my little spiel on happy holidays and Merry Christmas, but I'm wishing you all the very best. That's the thing about the holidays. Remember, there was that great J.K. Rowling post from a couple years ago where she talked about, she's impressive, right? Where she talked about how the holidays are really a measuring stick for people, how they're doing. And so you really want to be sensitive because, and that's my statement here. If you're doing well and life is going great, then the holidays are going to be fantastic. Man, why wouldn't they be? If you're down on your luck, if you're feeling depressed, if things are not going your way, then why wouldn't they be just a cruel reminder of how your life is going? So maybe the holidays are, of course, they're a celebration of life, and therefore they must be a reflection of how your life is going. And so I hope you're all doing well, and I want the people who are struggling to know. I think things do eventually get better if you just keep the faith in yourself, in God, in life, that eventually people who put forth their best effort and remain positive, like they don't always get the break and life can be cruel, and I'm not saying everything's a fairy tale, but I would just encourage people who are not doing that well right now to just keep at it and stay positive, because I'm hoping and praying and believing that things are going to turn around for you when you least expect it. I mean, life is funny like that. You meet the girl when you drop the expectations, right? You get promoted when you just do your job, when you don't think about it too hard, when you just pursue be passionate, just go, just flow. And so life can be very difficult. I know it firsthand. I mean, I've had a very privileged, very fortunate life, but I've had my share of struggles and still do. And so um, the holidays can be intense. And at the risk of repeating myself, to the point where it's ridiculous. I'm really wishing everyone the best. Sip of tea. All right. Very quick recap of why I've been talking about aliens so frequently lately, the last couple episodes. Super quick recap of kind of what I discussed in the last, I mean, real, I'm just going to be really fast. Recap of uh, what I discussed in the last few episodes. And then I want to just give you a random insight into some of the big players who are currently, like right now, having releasing new episodes and leading the conversation, the podcasters. I've mentioned them before in previous episodes, but I'm going to give them another shout out here because I just am actively listening to stuff. So I want to just keep you informed as to what the community is being exposed to right now. And so here's the big picture, big picture. Well, why wouldn't someone who's interested in finding first their political identity, and again, that search is not over, but I'm comfortable with the fact that I was a former Democrat and now I'm a Trump supporter. I know there's still a million questions about what that means and who I'm going to vote for next year, blah blah blah, all in the next cycle, all of that. But let's just say we're thinking about identity broadly, not just politically, but personally, religiously, spiritually. Who are we? Who am I? Who do I want to be? So what is the best way to organize a society? What's really important? Just someone asking the big questions and being interested in that kind of thing. So why wouldn't that kind of person be interested in whether or not there is other intelligent life way above humanity's current comprehension, um, from elsewhere, from deep in the earth? I mean, mythology, why wouldn't someone kind of generally be interested in these kinds of questions? And the answer is, of course, they would. So, um, but I guess I'll mention this here on the subject of esoteric knowledge and hidden knowledge. When you start looking into it, there is a point where you go, do I really want to keep going? Is it hidden for a reason? Is there something, is it better to just be in, is ignorance bliss on certain things? And I know this sounds very far out there and trippy, but the point is, people have been saying in the UFO community for, I guess, since the 30s, 40s, that we have been visited by several different alien species. Um, Let me even back it up and just say that something is going on, whether it's aliens, whether it's inner Earth beings, whether it's interdimensional beings, whether it's a combination of all of the above, whether it's some other non human intelligent consciousness, demon, angel, God, devil, whatever, the floodgates suddenly become open very quickly into all kinds of science fiction and religious um, ideas. And you go, well, okay, people are saying something is going on with advanced crafts and non human bodies. So do you buy that? And all I'm here to tell you is that that has been circulating. I know my parents will say, "Oh, I've been hearing that since the '70s or this." Yeah, I know, I get it. Uh, but what I'm saying is, I guess it's become an interest of mine. I've become exposed to it since I came onto social media a few years ago to start my podcast and promote it. And so, yeah, there are people who talk about such things, and there does seem to be momentum behind what they're calling the disclosure movement, where the government is going to finally come clean about what's going on. And so it's pretty wild, to say the least, right? And I've done a few episodes just covering generally. I'm not saying they were great episodes and that I even recommend you go back and listen to them, but just to give you some final context here, I did one a couple weeks ago detailing the several different types of theories of what the non human intelligence might be. I did one that just kind of filled in some loose ends that I felt like I missed on that, following on that. I interviewed a MAGA Satanist, kind of related. He's actually he's a non-theist Satanist. He doesn't believe in any of that stuff. So that was interesting. Here I have a Satanist bringing me back down to earth. Um, Then I just interviewed a guy named Jon Stewart, not the comedian, not the famous, super famous Jon Stewart, but a very credible UAP reporter, former governor candidate to be governor as a Libertarian Party in Illinois. Uh, Pretty serious and credible guy, as far as I understand, who's studied um, the phenomenon from a few different angles, most notably his pursuit of the truth about the alien tapes, something from 1997 about a particular piece of allegedly alien footage that he's kind of latched onto. So that was a sobering and intense conversation. And it's all about sip of tea. It's all about the truth and understanding and making sense of the world. At the same time, it gets a little freaky. I mean, again, to say the least. I mean, you're talking about the psychological effects of disclosing something that is possibly too much for the average person to tolerate. What if it's that there is this huge, or is it, or is it, or could we tolerate? What if it's, well, I don't want to go too deep into the what ifs and the situation. Go watch that interview with Jon Stewart. I'll say just this. He gives an analogy of a couple guys from a tribe standing by a river looking at a salmon swimming in the water. One guy wants to capture the salmon and eat it. One guy wants to study the salmon. One guy wants to pull the salmon out of the water, fix it, and put it back in and let it live its life. The other guy's just observing. I mean, you see what I'm saying? And the metaphor is, what if we are the salmon and the aliens and or interdimensional inner earth beings that are highly advanced and have true dominion over this world? What if that's the situation and we are just part of this larger life ecology that we're not in control of, and we're not at the top of the food chain? You know, again, there's a million different ways you could go with this idea of there's something extraordinary going on here. It involves non-human biologics, non-human advanced intelligence, and highly advanced space slash time crafts potentially. That's that's what's being talked about in many corners of Twitter, and it's bubbling into the mainstream, as I said in a recent episode. You have Joe Rogan, who is like the ultimate personification of alternative media, who I love, and he's opened the doors to all these theories and really given a platform to a lot of conspiracy theories. And certainly not all of it's correct. Certainly, there's a bunch of fiction intertwined into a lot of what's on the internet and probably what's been said on his show over the years. But is there something there? Is there actually a process happening here by which, through the alternative media structure, there is some hidden truth that's on the verge of being revealed? And by the way, final kind of distressing thought on the subject is, could disclosure involve some sort of scary event? Not only a shock that perhaps we couldn't tolerate psychologically, but, you know, some sort of cataclysm. I mean, again, you can just run down the list in your mind of all the possibilities of what could be if you take it as true that something has been going on and we're on the verge of disclosure of something. Maybe it's beautiful. Pray to God it's beautiful. But it's pretty wild. I mean, right? Okay, final thing on that very subject. Now, before I almost forgot to mention it. So Joe Rogan kind of gave birth to that alternative media structure, and in came guys like Jesse Michaels, host of the American Alchemy podcast, and Chris Ramsey, host of Area 52, I think his show is called. I don't watch either regularly. I don't watch really any podcast regularly. I would say American Alchemy is the podcast I listen to most. And I was just listening to today Jesse host James Fox, a super well-known guy in the UFO world. I think well liked and well respected. I certainly like him. He's made movies like I mean, look up James Fox and watch his movies. You will really like them. Talking about this case in Virginia, Brazil, with UFO people will know this case. Allegedly, two little girls found this tiny little creature with a big head and big red eyes, and it was really smelly, and it was like had this oily brown skin, and it was distressed, and it was suffering in the heat, and it had like claws, and they got scared and they ran away. And then a doctor ended up working on it, trying to save it. And the story that's been a well-known story, but what's breaking in James's new documentary on the subject is that the doctor is finally coming forward and saying, yeah, I was in the room with this alien, and I had a telepathic communication with it, and I'm now ready to tell my story. So what's interesting, obviously the whole thing is interesting, but about the alternative media structure and this disclosure, the gears of disclosure, you could say. Joe kind of birthed this structure. Jesse Michaels is interviewing James Fox, and they're getting into, with respect to the particulars of that case in Brazil, they're getting into um, well, I'll tell you, they weren't getting into the autopsy of the creature that was allegedly done. Or rather, it might have been the autopsy of the soldier who carried the creature on his lap, according to the story, apparently got struck by its claw, whether it was intentional, malicious act by the creature or not, maybe an accident. He ended up getting an infection and dying. And that's part of the story. And so maybe it's actually that soldier who died, his brain. But James was like, "Hey," in fact, actually, Jesse was like, "I know you're about to do an episode with Chris Ramsey, and you're going to get into that autopsy. So we'll go light on that subject, but I know you guys are going to double click on that." I love that term Jesse used. And so what I'm noticing here is a real structure where people are working together, people who are really studied on this stuff are working together, hitting it from different angles, and it could be nothing. It could just be another cycle in the fictional UFO lore, UAP lore, as they're now called, or it could be a news cycle, um, an actual disclosure happening. I don't know, but it's pretty cool, pretty scary. It's cool. It's scary. I'll say it for the fifth time because it's just you can't really overdo it in this case. It's wild. Okay, so I've talked about the holidays, talked about aliens, and why I've been on that subject and why I'll continue to be on that subject. It won't be the entirety of my persona, but I'm not going to hide my interest in the subject. At the same time, I'm also not going to pursue it to the point where I want to provoke any sort of interaction with the government or the beings, I'm not trying to get that deep into it. I'm just trying to live a good life, understand what the requirements are to live a good life. And I know, I mean, I get it now. It's simple. Be a good person, take care of yourself. I mean, that's it, right? And your loved ones, of course. Be there for people, be charitable, put your oxygen mask on first, but do give. Um, I think that'll get you pretty much 90% of the way there. Have fun. Um, have some fun as well. It's all about what's the best way to structure society? What politics is best? Would a classic 90s Democrat be the right choice? Would a 2020 Republican be the choice? Is a MAGA Republican? What type of MAGA Republican? Wait, if the socialists would just drop the cultural, racial hate shit, would I agree with them economically? Probably not. But you just go, okay, trying to figure this all out. And that extends to deeper questions about humanity and who we are and what we are, where we come from, where we're going, and when. So it's a journey of self discovery. I've said that before. And that's what this really is. I'm not there yet. I have not arrived. I'm 36 years old. I'm happily married now for 2 months. It's the happiest stretch of my life. I mean, this it could life could not be going better, and it wasn't always this way. So, I'm feeling grateful. And still, though, wanting to share with you, wanting to connect with you, wanting to be a part of the solution wherever we're going, to just be a part of the solution and reduce the toxicity. And studying critical race theory in law school a couple years ago just opened my eyes to the toxicity on the left. And I go, this is bullshit. This is not helping anyone. This is actively hurting the country, actively tearing it down. And that's why I ended up voting for Trump ultimately. And so here you have a guy, Ben Sasse, I don't know, former senator, accomplished guy. I really didn't, I should have, I guess, studied his background a little more, but author, family man, Mitt Romney's good friend. I think he was a senator from Utah, but he was an accomplished guy and probably a presidential candidate. Um, Definitely a guy I could have seen throwing his hat in the ring if he hadn't already run for president. Very jovial, godly, positive, and he makes this heartbreakingly beautiful, tragic but resilient message post yesterday or this morning about how he's been diagnosed with like an advanced stage pancreatic cancer, and it's a death sentence. And I think it's fair to say he was probably a never Trumper, all of that, but whatever. This is a guy who demonstrated tremendous character, has demonstrated tremendous character, and I easily made fun of for being kind of dorky and wooden. And I remember doing that myself, but just poking lighthearted fun at him. Um, and I wrote in a comment to his post, like acknowledging that I've made fun of him before in a lighthearted way, but never doubted the goodness in his heart, is what I said, or his love for his country. In fact, the one really memory I have of him is when Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Barrett, was up for her nomination. He kind of asked her some juvenile, I will say, some super basic questions about the Constitution and the structure of it and freedom and the American system. And look, it was kind of dorky and kind of basic. It's like, dude, I was just in law school, and to me, it was just like, what are we in fifth grade? Just like this is embarrassing. But in hindsight, he was just trying to give Justice Barrett an opportunity to talk about how great America is. And but he did look a little dorky. Um, what else can I say about that? It just felt like, all right, man, are you trying to just look cool here too? You're trying to be like the hip history teacher teaching us about the good. It was just, but it's all good. It was just kind of funny. He kind of invited this lighthearted jesting, but seems like a really good guy and a guy that I would have liked. Uh, I mean, I don't mean to speak of him in the past tense, but that I would like. So just a beautiful. His post was. It wasn't defiant. It was just this powerful mixture of acceptance, humility, grace, um, defiance to the extent that you can be defiant against a known fate. I mean, you've got 6 months to live. You're going to be dead with that diagnosis. I mean, never say never. And we're all praying for medical advances. That would be amazing. But he'd be the first with this diagnosis to beat it. And you just think, so first of all, just prayers to his family and to him, and read that post. You've probably seen it already. It's just an amazing tribute to the human spirit. And what a, I have a friend, a mentor. His name is Jay Ferrugia. He's got his brand is Renegade Fitness, Renegade Gym. Renegade Radio is his podcast. He's a very well known and well respected, longtime fitness coach, and more. A writer, speaker, great guy. Jay Ferrugia, check him out on Instagram. And I've been around him long enough to know that one of the things, now that I think about it, this was a friend of his, a saying that he and a friend of his both used to share with me from time to time. So I know this phrase. I think it's. I think I'm within my rights to say that this phrase has circulated Jay's mind on many occasions. And the teaching is to keep death close. It's like a Native American thing, apparently, but keep death close. How would you act if you only had a month to live? The classic thing. Or flip it and go, if you could only have 2 or 3 words to describe you, just 3 adjectives, what 3 would you want people to say when you're gone? So, just keeping the perspective that life is temporary, and it is. Now, interestingly about going back to this trippy time we're in and aliens and this and that, well, we also may be living in a time where we may be able soon to extend the human lifespan, for God knows how long. So it's a trippy time, but let's stick with the premise that life is temporary and that it should be, for now. And it just very sobering. Can you imagine? I just think for myself, I lived so many years selfishly and in my own head and in my own world. I'm glad now that I am at least wanting to have an outward disposition and even be helpful in society, talking about politics, hopefully helping the discussions in some small way. Um, but I'm looking to do more, I guess, with my life. It just makes you think like, am I satisfied? And I'm like I said, I'm personally I've never been more satisfied, but it raises these existential questions and it's deep. And your heart goes out to someone who gets a diagnosis like that. Um, and it makes you think. So, like he said, like Ben Sasse, who I've been told is a good author, and I'm going to go check out his books, said in his amazing post, which you have to read, like he said in that post, it's a good, there could be worse seasons than the holiday season to have to share this news, to get this news and have to share it. Um, Perhaps his family can wrap themselves in the majesty and the beauty of the holiday season for some comfort, but it's tough and life is tough. And the bottom line for me is I know I've been so lucky to have such little run-ins with hardship emotionally, physically, spiritually. Keep death close. That could change on it, just like that. So something I'll continue to reflect on. And the last thing here, to bring in a little politics, I want to talk about JD Vance and how he is kind of the perfect symbol for MAGA, the perfect guy, rather, to lead MAGA because he can really bridge the divide. There's obviously a divide that's been on the right. It's been evident kind of since the election. I've been talking about it on my podcast the, the whole time. It's increasingly obvious that it exists, and that is the Nick Fuentes Groypers wing versus the Jews, all the Jews that are in MAGA, but not just the Jews, the people that are with the Jews, the people that are not inherently against the Jews, the people who basically the split is between people who want common sense MAGA, which is strict and tough and controversial as hell, and then the Nick Fuentes Groypers who want racist, anti-Semitic MAGA. And I know I was very fair. Go listen to the episode I did a couple months ago about Nick Fuentes. I was more than fair, perhaps too fair. So don't tell me that I'm painting Nick with too broad of a brush. The guy invites the controversy and he has to lie in the bed that he's made at the end of the day. there's that extreme wing, which is
Mhm.
just it's hateful. It's and the irony is that you have Nick in so many viral clips of his talking about how Trump is actually the hateful one, and Trump is using outright cruelty to mask his failures to deliver on certain policy platforms. It's just like, geez, there is this war going on the right, and JD Vance is very well positioned. Look, I like Vance a lot. I mean, I'm totally behind him. I love DeSantis too. There's a lot of Republicans that I could get behind, a lot of them that seem competent and on the same page as me in terms of cultural issues. And yeah, I'll trust you on economic issues because it's not my strong suit. I'm more comfortable with cultural issues. I'm identifying with these people, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on the economy until I learn more about it. There's a lot of people I could get behind, but JD is best positioned to bridge that divide. And the most recent manifestation of this divide is this battle that him and Nick Fuentes are having. Nick has talked a lot of shit about his wife being about JD Vance in general, about how he's a plant, he's a amalgamation, he's a Frankenstein created by Peter Thiel, he's a puppet for the Jews, interracial marriage, the whole pro immigration, the whole nine yards. And JD Vance is just like, look, bro, I'm happily married to a Hindu woman. I'm Catholic. We can all have our own beliefs. JD Vance is the common sense MAGA version where it's strict, it's controversial to a lot of people who are on the far left who can't fathom trying to adhere to traditional American norms. But JD Vance, on the one hand, is saying we must adhere to traditional American norms, and you should expect that your neighbors will speak English. And by the way, I'm married to a Hindu woman, and it's totally cool, and you need to accept that. He's like he's well positioned. So there's this split on the right, and Charlie Kirk's murder was a huge catalyst in that rift growing wider. And so that's really interesting how many people say Charlie Kirk, in hindsight, was the one guy keeping this whole thing together. And without him, chaos has been unleashed. And the question is, what's life going to be for the Republican Party post Trump? What's politics going to be like post Trump? Who's going to get the MAGA machinery? I'll be honest with you. I snuck in a listen of a recent Tucker Carlson episode. I liked it. He's good. He's a really good podcast host, regardless of how you feel about his thoughts on Israel or any other issue. I want to commend him on his hosting ability. And he was talking about the MAGA machinery and who's going to inherit it. And yes, that's of course the question. Which way? So Vance, it's kind of like we've if you want to be like intensely scrutinize it intensely, you could say, which way would he take it? It's a question mark. He's probably, whereas some people, they're this way, or some people are this way. Steve Bannon would take it one way. Marco Rubio would take it one way. JD Vance is straddling the line. We think we know which way he would take it, which is following Trump's lead. Now, Vance is interesting because there's only one Trump, right? But Vance, his ability to intellectualize the Trump phenomenon and deal with the media and straddle that line is adding to his aura, if you will, and it's creating a phenomenon. He is doing a really good job letting his reputation build. The meme, you probably, you're not like hooked on the internet, you probably don't know that there's this meme that's been around for like a year now of JD Vance with this. People were trying to clown on him, put a big wig on him with curls and like a big fat face, and he ended up embracing it. And now that meme is like his ultimate weapon. It's just everywhere. Dancing fat JD Vance with curls, just like owning whatever environment he's in. His aura is really growing. And so there may be a Vance phenomenon. But who knows? It's a million years until the next presidential election, and there's so much talent on the right. But yeah, so the most recent manifestation of that riff, I think I went on a tangent and forgot to close a loop here, is Nick said he's always talking shit about Vance and Vance's wife and how and he's calling Indian people jeets. I mean, these people are hateful. Just and they think they can hide behind, "Oh, you're gonna shame me for being edgy on the internet?" And it's like, "No, dude, you're being fucking a racist asshole on the internet. Sleep in that bed, baby." At the end of the day, no ill will, just straight up. Like, that's life. I'm sorry that you were young and grew up in this age and put yourself in that position. But until you start changing your behavior, no one's going to take you seriously. And I know, who am I to say that? But that is actually, I think, the ultimate truth. So, for whatever reason, Vance, in a recent speech, I think at a Turning Point event, a Charlie Kirk organization event, Vance was either asked in an interview or he said, but he's basically responding to this remark that Fuentes, or he basically is asked to respond to people who call your wife a G. And Vance goes, anyone who says that can eat a dick, you know? So, okay. So there's Vance straddling the line. He's never distancing himself too far from the Groypers because he understands there are some legitimate grievances there and he wants to address them. And he doesn't want to shame people unnecessarily and say you're going to be ostracized from society forever because you said some hateful things, you made some mistakes when you were young. At the same time, he's saying eat a dick. Okay? Next question. So that's interesting. And that's about all I've got, ladies and gentlemen. It's Christmas Eve. We just watched Red One. It was a little cute. I mean, The Rock actually had a pretty good performance. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't that great. But so that's an option for you. But have a great holiday. All right. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. All of that. I'm sure I'll see you before New Year's. But interesting time in life. People always say it's probably the most interesting time to be alive, right? Because the present moment has got to always be that. But with this disclosure conversation, with AI, with medicine advancing, with what else? I forget. Okay. But many people say, I know I'm sounding like a fucking genius here, but many people say that we are at the precipice of a big turn. I mean, think of the advances we've had scientifically in the last 100 years in relation to the previous 1,000 years, 10,000 years. What are the next 50 years going to look like? 20 years, 100 years? Let's hope they're good. Let's do our part to make sure they're good. And let's look out for each other, take care of ourselves and our families first. But let's just have good intentions. Let's not be false. Let's not pretend we're going to be more charitable than we're going to be. But I'm just kind of talking to myself here. Hopefully we can move into whatever this new phase is, whether it's just life as usual or truly something fascinating. Let's do what we can to make the world a better place. Let's do what we can. Nothing more, nothing less. All right. All right. I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on myself. This is what this is all about. Looking forward to more reflective episodes with you, hosting more guests. I've been teasing for the last couple of weeks now. Oh, I'm going to have some politics. I am going to have some people. I have a guy running for governor, I think in Maine. We're pretty much booked for next month. I've been trying to get a date nailed down with someone who's running for Congress. A well-known person on Twitter running for Congress. So we're just getting started here on the Brian Esco Show, and I'm honored to be on this journey with you. And I thank you so much for your interest and attention. So happy holidays, and I'll see you next time.